Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Onboard story. We're doing a sort of 2-week flashback to race 2 in Misano from the Blancpain GT World Challenge, the sprint series. It's been renamed Blancpain GT World Challenge Europe. So here we are lining up for the start. Next to me is 519, that's my main competition in the Pro-Am category. And as you can see in front of us, we're starting a little bit further back, and we get sort of caught out by the leaders already going for it before we can even see the lights. So there's a bit of a gap to the cars in front, but we'll close up to them pretty quickly. I already had discussions with the guys starting in front of us and knew that two of the Audi guys were planning some aggressive moves at the start, and I didn't want to get caught up in that. So on the left there is Phil Keen in the 519 Lamborghini. He's our main competition. He's a Lamborghini factory driver, also a really good guy, and obviously very fast. To be a factory driver for any of these brands, you have to be bullets. I get caught out there with a little bit of snap oversteer, so having got in front of him, Phil now has the run on the inside to turn 8, which is a hairpin. I have to give him the space. My tire temperatures were not up to my tires were not up to temperature, and I was just getting caught out by massive doses of snap oversteer. So in the end, it was actually quite a terrible start. I think that there was potential, if I rewatched this video multiple times, to change some of my decisions, and I maybe could have gained 3 or 4 places, but instead I lost a place to Phil, and so at least it makes for interesting viewing, because now the race is on. So the guys in front, they're battling quite aggressively, fighting for limited space on track. This means that Phil is also basically stuck behind them, and that brings me back into the game as a train starts to form behind one of the Mercedes drivers throughout the stint. So I'm going to show you this entire clip uninterrupted until we complete our battle with Phil, and just sort of try and involve you in as much of the action as possible. So Phil, the Lamborghini has worse acceleration at this track compared to others in 2nd and 3rd gear. Generally they have pretty good top end, but it depends on the balance of performance, and it seemed that at this track, out of specific corners, the Ferrari was superior in 2nd and 3rd gear. So I wasn't aware of this until this race 2, because I spent so much time behind the Lamborghini that I was starting to understand where its weaknesses were. So my plan was to try and get as close as I can in those corners and get a run out on the exit and get them at the next corner. Trouble was, they were quicker than me in sector 1, so you can see them here pulling away, the whole group basically. I'm still waiting for my tires to come in. You can see that red square on the rear view camera. That indicates that my left rear tire is not up to the right pressure yet. So while that's happening, you've got to try to stay as close as you can to the guys in front, not lose any pace, and just hope that your tires come in at the right moment when their tires are going off. Everyone is sliding around. This race was incredibly hot. Really one of the hottest races I've done. Sticky feet, sticky shoes in the pedal box, all that kind of stuff, just from the heat in this race. So that's why we were running such low pressures to begin with, hoping for our tires to come in later. As you can see here though, the final sector of the lap, I was much quicker and starting to get the run and thinking about a move around the outside into 1. But to be honest with you, the move was never going to be on. I was trying to force Phil into a mistake, but the guy is such a pro that doing something like that was never going to be easy. He had me covered for quite a long time in this race, and I just couldn't really find a way past. I also made some rules with myself that I could only overtake in certain corners to avoid any unwanted contact or penalties, things like that. The 2 races prior to this one, I had done some pretty cool overtaking maneuvers, but they did result in a little bit of contact, and I just wanted to avoid that in this race. I wanted it to be a cleaner race and think a little bit longer term. So a sprint race is 1 hour long, and I get to drive between 30 and 35 minutes of that race, but it's still an hour's long race is actually quite long compared to Gran Turismo Sport, for example, where you're doing 5 to 10 lap races that end very quickly. Those are like basically super sprint races. These are endurance races in comparison to that. So trying my best to be as patient as possible and wait for mistakes. Full there runs a little bit wide again into sector 3, and I close up again. But in this sector of the track, there's not much you can do. So you have to wait again for a mistake to happen in sector 1, where my overtaking spot was going to be. Getting a better run onto the main straight here. The rules in Blancpain say that the green areas, the green painted areas, are game. So you can put your car in that area and that won't be determined as track limits, but anything beyond that is track limits. And the reason for that is every time someone runs wide on these kinds of tracks, so Misano, Budapest, etc., the officials have to create an entire incident report, which requires a lot of paperwork and stuff. Now if we are running wide every lap, all of us, and there's 13 corners on the track, times 30 cars, times 1 hour, you can just imagine the paperwork gets out of hand. So they give us directives in the driver's briefing about which corners we can and cannot cut, and everything else is sort of open, because they've determined that the time advantage is not as significant as you'd think. So that's why you see us using a lot of green areas here. Everyone is going beyond the white lines in certain corners. The key thing is it's the same for everyone. So as long as it's the same for everyone, we can use those limits as much as we need to. And as racing drivers, it's our obligation to push our cars to the absolute limits of what is allowed. So it doesn't look pretty sometimes, especially at tracks like Misano, but it is what it is. And you know, just recently I raced at Zandvoort, and track limits was no issue there, because if you go wide, you go into a wall. So do I wish that every track was like that? Yes, but then again, these tracks like this one, which have a lot of runoff, it's just a different challenge, different way of going racing, and I kind of enjoy it. So my favorite tracks are the ones like Suzuka, Zandvoort, Nürburgring, where mistakes are punished, but at the same time there's something special to these tracks where you have to figure out where you can and cannot maximize, which curves you cannot hit, and as long as it's fair for everyone, so be it. Let's go as fast as we can. So this the blue Mercedes, just about 3 or 4 cars in front of us, is actually creating a bit of a train, driven by Lucas Stoltz, Black Falcon Mercedes. They are generally quite strong in all Blancpain races, but they seem to be struggling at this specific race, or this specific track. Could have been related to tire pressures being wrong, could be related to the heat of the day, those kinds of things. This inside move here was something I did in race 1 the day before. I was leading race 1 quite comfortably, and then after a safety car period there was a crash in front of me, which I tried my best to avoid. Eventually just tapped my front nose against the car that was spinning. Wasn't enough damage for me to stop. I could keep going, but I lost the lead, dropped down to 4th place, and had to fight my way back up to 2nd. Just missed out on the win there. I think it was quite an unfortunate incident, and I can't show that to you because Blancpain have let me, they've given me permission to show my heats, my races. However, I'm not allowed to show incidents which cause controversy, so they just want to avoid some analysis by the peanut gallery, myself included. Okay, so trying to forceful here, still into a mistake, going around towards the outside of turn 1, seeing if he could outbrake himself, but he's too wise to it. The guy's a machine, and he's doing a great job so far to keep me behind. I think I had superior acceleration on the exit of the final turn leading into 1. Everywhere else were pretty evenly matched, so there was not much I could do. So just trying my best to just lull him into a mistake, and if that doesn't work, I would back off and then try again. But so far everything I'm trying, positioning my car in the different places, he's not falling for any of it. So the battle is on, the challenge is on, and I'm just hoping that somewhere along the line his car is either affected more by the heat and my lower tire pressures will come into play, or he just makes a mistake because he's too hot. But that's looking unlikely. I mean, he is younger than me, so probably fitter as well. But we're getting close. Because of this train in front of us that's being sort of that's created a sort of blocker, I am able to still put up a pretty decent fight. There was a phase in the race where I lost a little bit of time there. Phil makes his first obvious mistake of the race, but you cannot do anything in sector 3. It's too fast and flowing. I think about a move down the inside here, but the braking zone is too short, and even though it's a second gear corner, there's just not enough space to get something done there. So he runs a little bit wide there on the exit, a little bit of wheel spin. I get a run again, think about the inside, but I just cannot get it done. So we both sort of bomb into turn 1. You could see how committed he was to avoid any overtaking maneuver there, and sort of anticipates what I was trying to do. I get a bit of understeer on the exit of 3, and then fall back in line for 4 and think about the next lap. I'm just trying to stay as close as I can. The car's definitely settled in. The rear is moving a little bit, but I can see that everyone around me, including the car behind me, I was followed by the AF Corsa car of Andrea Bertolini. Everyone's starting to struggle now for tire temperature, tire grip, and this is generally my favorite phase of the race. If I can sniff that I'm a little bit quicker on used tires, I try to maximize it as much as I can. But that doesn't mean that you just sort of cruise past the guys. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 tenths at most per lap. So I make a small mistake there onto the back straight. I run a little bit wide. You have to keep a really tight line on the apex of 10 to get on the power as early as you can, so you can point towards the straight and not towards the gravel trap when you're going full gas. Again, seems that sector 3, the final 3 or 4 corners were where I was superior and close up, but not close enough to get a move done into turn 1. So Phil's pulled away a little bit here, even though my car is settling down. I've had a sort of change from drifting rear oversteer to now some understeers kicking in, so I'm having to adjust my my braking technique. Here's the understeer again, and a big lift in 3 just to try and make it around the corner. So I do have to adapt my driving style here a little bit, just to try and like bring the rears back into play and stop relying too much on the front. I do have a tendency to rely too much on the front and push the front too hard. So when understeer kicks in, it can kick in worse for me than other guys. So one of the ways you do that is just the way that you trail brake into a corner. You can also adjust the brake balance. You can go more front or more rear depending on what the car is doing, and then sometimes you can bring that sort of imbalance back into play where it's more easy to manipulate the car. So here, if you hug the inside line, you get a lot of grip on the exit, and you're not pointing towards the gravel. You get a good run. As you can see, I don't have that acceleration advantage at this phase of the at this part of the track, and in this phase of the acceleration zones, and I found that quite interesting. It was only on the exit of the final turn where I really had acceleration advantage. It could have just been that our gear ratios, which you cannot change in a GT car, our ratios were just better suited to the final turn. I'm not sure what gear Phil had to use, maybe third gear instead of second, but I was able to go down to second and get some really good acceleration and get a really nice line on the exit of the final turn, which kept me in touch for the rest of the lap. Okay, so going into 1 again, Phil's missing the inside curb. There was some curb missing there, and as a result, it was by me taking a little bit more risk by cutting that curb, I was gaining a small advantage at this point. But by now I'm just wondering if it's better for me not to overtake at all and just wait for the pit stops, and let my co-driver Renat sort of finish the job against the teammate of Phil Keen. But at the same time, I'm still a racing driver and I don't want to just cruise around doing nothing. If I see a move, I'm going to try and go for it. But I can still see that Phil's pulling away a little bit here. Although, to be fair to you, the nature of the camera that we use for onboard videos does tend to make the car in front look further ahead than it actually is. I've watched this a few times and thought to myself, wow, that guy was really far away, but in real life they're actually much closer and you're within the slipstream range, so don't be fooled too much by that. Okay, going back into final sector, caught up a little bit in the middle, and gonna just really try and push as hard as I can. Phil is missing that apex into this double right here, and I'm just getting a slightly tighter line, which allows me to get on the power a little bit earlier than him, and as a result get closer for the start of a fresh lap. So now the blue Mercedes has broken away, it's stretched out this train of cars, but the Aston Martin in front of Phil seems to be slowing him down a bit, and that's brought me back into play after drifting away the previous 3 laps. So Phil misses his apex there, runs a bit wide in 2, I keep my foot down in 3, and he runs wide again on the exit of 3, and I just try to get my best for a move down the inside. He leaves the door open respectfully and gives me just enough space to get a move done, and I get into the lead. It was not planned or expected. I was waiting for some kind of mistake in Sector 1, as I explained at the beginning of the video, but given how he was driving and the lines he was taking, I wasn't expecting it to happen. However, once it did happen, I couldn't wait, and if you run that wide on the exit of 3, the guy behind you is almost invited to go down the inside for 4. So as you could see there, he could have easily slammed the door on me, but it would have probably resulted in both of us having contact. So I had to go for a risky move there, and I've gotten to know Phil since we started the beginning of the season in Brands Hatch, and I have a lot of respect for him, so full credit to him for giving me enough space to get the move done. I'm now in front, he's just behind me, and this train in front of us is again bunching up. I'm not entirely sure why. It could have been that some racing was going down, and I can see that the Aston Martin can't quite keep up. So if I can get the Aston Martin between myself and Phil, that's a really big advantage for the pit stop phase, as we'll be entering with a big enough gap to maybe try and get out in the lead for the second phase of the race. So now going into 2, where I had a little bit more free air compared to being stuck behind the Lambo, I could see my lines better and was actually getting a little bit faster compared to the guys in front. The group in front of this Aston are starting to really fight, and as you can see there, the Aston has quite a lot of oversteer on the power. I've got understeer on the power, so it's all happening here. But I really now, since I can smell a little bit of blood in the water, I want to try and get as far up this field as I can, because I know that the pit stops are going to be coming soon. I was in the car for 34 minutes during the stint, and we are 17 minutes in, so we're actually only halfway, and it just shows the value. If you just wait long enough and you can get a move done, you'd be surprised how much time you still have left in the race. Taking the more ideal tight line compared to the Aston, he runs a little bit wide on the exit. I am now firmly in the slipstream, and think about a move into this high-speed right, but it's never going to happen. It's way too fast. There is no braking zone. I'd have to cut the corner quite a lot to get any kind of move done, and because we're not in the same class, it's not entirely necessary. So again, Sector 3, our cars clearly had a grip advantage compared to the other guys. So big thanks to the Rinaldi Racing for a pretty awesome race setup. Was really happy with the setup for this race, and yeah, it just gave me a lot of options to race the guys in front of me. I wish I had a slightly better start, but so be it. Okay, faking a move down the inside here into 1. I think the Aston knew that was never going to happen. He didn't do anything to protect it, but he does go a little bit wide in 2 and 3. I keep it flat. He goes wide again, and I get the run down the inside. He opens the door, and I dive down into turn 4 to get the lead. Sorry, not get the lead, get a car between me and Phil Keane. So from now on, it's just a run to try and catch the group in front. Just tried my best to build a gap. The Lamborghini that I was racing in the Pro-Am class, the 519, they were starting to struggle at this point of the race with tyre wear. Well, it's not necessarily tyre wear, it's tyre pressures and temperatures. That's something that simulators don't necessarily get right. You can have quite a lot of tyre wear, but if your tyre temperatures and your tyre pressures are okay, then you don't necessarily experience the kind of wear that you do in a simulator. So for us, it's more pressure sensitive and heat sensitive than anything else. And tyres are really affected by heat cycles. So if you have more than one heat cycle, that means using the tyre for a run, coming in, letting the tyres cool down, and then going again. Sometimes you'll see a big performance drop off from that kind of action. So almost getting towards the end of the video now. I'll give you a rundown of what happened. I managed to keep the lead. We boxed in the lead, and then in the pit stops lost 3 seconds because of traffic, and actually lost that 3-second buffer that I'd built up. So my co-driver Renat had to re-overtake the Lamborghini, which he managed to do sort of 3 laps into a stint. He pulled away quite comfortably, but in the second last lap, while taking his, in my opinion, regular line into turn 8, an Audi that was right in front of him did a very late apex, cut across Renat, and was pitched into a spin. In the end, we got a drive-through penalty for that, which we only found out after the podium celebrations, which was pretty devastating. But you cannot reverse drive-through penalty decisions post-race. So in the end, we had to accept that, and the Lamborghini eventually got the win, but we did cross the line first. So it was just one of those weekends which we just had a little bit too much bad luck, and in the end, maybe it wasn't necessary to race with the Audi, but Renat was doing the perfect job, and I absolutely don't blame him. I think that the drive-through was a bit aggressive, but nevertheless, this race was pretty awesome. As I catch the group in front, it seemed that we had really good late race pace, and the guys in front of us were going for a more aggressive strategy with their tire pressures to get a jump at the start. So once I got in the lead here, and then got the Aston, I tried to pull away, managed to pull up a 3-second gap, but the next thing that happens now is this curb on the inside that we just passed was damaged, so they called a full course yellow, which bunched the field back up again, and I had to push again for another gap. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. It was a pretty awesome race with Full Keen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you around the next lap. Also, thank you to my Patreon subscribers, members, and for those of you who like these videos, please like, share, and subscribe. Cheers.